I'm a really loud speaker, so I'll probably move away from the microphone. One, I'm not used to being fancy in front of a microphone, so you'll see me drift. Thank you guys for having me here today. What Mike said is, actually this is a very important topic, something that we've been seeing an increase in workshops wanting us to do because everyone's understanding what the current climate is in this country. So, I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to go back to the workshop. And the reason I want to tell you a little bit about myself is so you understand how I got to this point of understanding that our country does need this type of workshops. Like I said, my name is Richard Morgan. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I joined the military when I was 18 years old in 2007. I was deployed to Iraq. I was a combat photographer, and I traveled to 32 different countries. That sounds awesome and amazing, and it's the worst marketing material ever for anyone trying to figure out if they should or should not join the military, because people hear that like, that is great. Now, when I left the military, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I stumbled into marketing. I actually ended up working as a political chief of staff for a state delegate. And then I ended up here. This place has been one of the most important places for me. Has been one of the most important places for me because I have found a way to help people out and understand the true understanding of the military itself and how they actually grab people, make you feel like they're the greatest thing in the world, use you, and get rid of you. So, when we're talking about this workshop, I'm going to bring up a couple of things. I'm going to bring up selective service, I'm going to bring up conscientious objectors. Those are two very important things in everything we do, especially with Center on Conscious and War, which I will abbreviate to CCW in my conversations with you guys today. But those are the two biggest things, and they are very important because one is a tool in how to get young people into the military, selective service. The other one, being a conscious objector and letting the military know you're a conscious objector, is the other way that you keep yourself from being drafted. Okay? So, a little bit about Center on Conscious and War, CCW. CCW has been around for 87 years. We were basically created out of the wake of World War I. We were seeing how conscientious objectors inside the United States military and around the world were being treated. And the Quakers, Mennonites, Presbyterians wanted a way to tell the United States government that it is okay to be a conscious objector, and that they are conscious objectors, you should not treat them like they're less than human beings. So, during World War II, we were just talking about that this morning, during World War II, a lot of people don't know, we actually had to draft a lot of people to join the military. Even though it's quoted as one of the greatest wars that the United States has ever fought in, everybody wanted to fight, that's not true. The United States military knew that we didn't have the numbers to get involved. We saw that we didn't have the right numbers when we did our first campaigns in Africa, and so we instituted a draft. And that draft, you could not say you were a conscious objector. You couldn't. They just swept you up. If you're going to be a conscious objector, we'll deal with that down the line. That was unfair because by the time a lot of young individuals said they were a conscious objector, a lot of the military said, well, it's kind of convenient you say that after you graduate, because you're inside the United States military. During the Korean War, same thing, and then of course, for most people whose education is up to date, Vietnam was a complete disaster. Who was a conscious objector? Even though a lot of them were going to the draft force and saying, I'm a conscious objector, the United States military said, well, yes and no. Why are you just not saying it now? So, after dealing with that, the United States decided to do something in the 1980s, which was create the Selective Service Program. We knew, and we have always known, that anytime the United States is not involved in any type of conflict or major war, our military numbers are always low. And some see that as a good thing. Constitutionally, we're not supposed to have a standing military. So if we have low enough numbers, we make those who believe in the Constitution happy because we don't have technically a huge standing military. And at the same time, generals have enough in the military that they can put boots on the ground when they need to. But they wanted to create something to help them out even more, which was the Selective Service Program. The Selective Service Program, when you turn 16, especially in a lot of states, about 25 states, 16 is the magic number because you get your driver's license. You are automatically enrolled in the Selective Service Program when you sign for your license. Now, I was just saying earlier, when I turned 16, my parents were not in there with me. I got my license, I started checking everything off, and didn't realize I checked off to be part of the Selective Service Program. That was in 2007. Still not super sophisticated, but if you're not paying attention, and you're 16 years old, you sign off on something that you have no clue what it does for you. And honestly, if you went on the street right now and said, hey, You know your kid's part of the selective service program? They would say, what's that? You could leave it at that and make them panic if their kid's joining some sort of gang. I mean, at some point they will look at the United military gang. But they don't know that their kid is actually enrolled in something that if the United States decided to get involved in something big or was needed for a draft, they could get drafted. That's how devious the selective service program is. So, what we were able to do in the 80s and early 90s was be able to say, look, you have created this device, and it is a device, to grab young people without them knowing it, and have them sign up for something that they don't want to be a part of without them knowing it. There should be a way for them to say, I don't want to be a part of this because I am a conscientious objector. So, our organizations, about 15 of them, came together with the United States government and part of the selective service program and said, let's do this. If the individual, before they join the military, has documentation stating that they are a conscientious objector before they are drafted or meet in front of the draft board, we will accept it. Now, they create a couple of caveats with it. You can't not be part of selective service. Because if you do that, a couple things will happen. One, you could be jailed. And I say could because we haven't seen that in a very, very long time. It's one of those spirit provisions. Like when I was in the military, they would say if you are late for formation, you could possibly go to jail. The dumbest thing in the world, but it was a thing that scared young people when they first joined the military. It's something that we like to do. We use jail as this whole catch-all thing. If you act bad, we're going to put you in jail. That's one of the ways we use it for selective service. Two, if you're looking for student grants or anything like that, and you're not registered for selective service, you cannot receive any type of loan, grants, or anything special for education. So, they figured out how they can get young people to sign, because a lot of young people who are going off to college or doing anything knows that they need to have this type of money, and they always package it, well, we might not need it. We don't do the draft anymore. I mean, come on. Everyone who went to Iraq and Afghanistan, they wanted to go. And it's really, really good. It makes you feel like, okay, this is a very innocent thing to check off the box for. So, what we're going to talk about today are ways that you can say you're a conscious objector before you join the military. We'll talk a little bit even more about those who are in the military and how they can say they're a conscious objector and how CCW is tied to all that. So, let's say that you are in the part where you are there at the driver's license with your son, your daughter, whomever it may be, and they see the form that says selective service. That child handwrites in their own handwriting, has to be their handwriting, should not be the parents'. Their handwriting saying, I object to any forms of war underneath. Again, it has to be their handwriting and it has to be witnessed by the clerk. So if you are at the DMV and signing the paper, there's a clerk who hands you the paperwork. Make sure they understand, my child is going to be putting this in their form, and then that child has to write that. I object to any forms of war. So the next step. You have to have some sort of documentation from the time that you are signed up for selective service to the time you turn 18 that shows from the time you wrote that you object to war to the time you're 18 that is consistent. The government doesn't want you writing that, and there's no way proving that you are a conscious objector. So we tell a lot of people, start early. It doesn't have to be 16. It doesn't have to be when they get their license. It could be 13, it could be 12. The United States government likes it to be around 11 because they consider that the age of when you are very understanding of what war is and how it impacts you and your family. I know, it's crazy. They put a lot of faith in kids. It's just the funnest thing in the world. But 11, we tell everyone to start the youngest, and that's what the United States government, that all they have to do is write, I'm against war, and then write the reasons. Because, this is the things that 11-year-old thinks about all the time. Why they're against war. Unless you're in a war-torn country, then it makes more sense. But that's what they have to put. We tell people, keep them documenting that every year, so it's consistent. So the government cannot say in any way, shape, or form, well, when they were 12 years old, they were against war, but we got these really cool things called drones. They're so awesome. They don't even have to go outside the country anymore. They can go to Vegas, Massachusetts, Florida, and fly these cool things. So, do you really object to dying, or do you really object to war? If you keep it consistent all the time, right? I am against war. and these are my reasons are, it is a consistent documentation, and it doesn't break. And that's really important. Like I said, the government can't try to come in and be like, well, there was a break between when they were 16 and 18, which is when the government likes to try to target those who join the military between 16 and 22, and we don't want there to be any break. Now, once those documentations are written, everything is created by your child, you might think, okay, where do we keep that information? One, you can keep it on your own, or you can give it to your local church organization. They can keep it on file. They don't have to be Quaker, they don't have to be Mennonite, they don't have to be Presbyterian, they just have to be a local church that you attend on a regular basis that can hold that documentation. Now, if you don't attend church on a local basis, you can give it to our organizations or organizations like us. And the information we gave out, there's another organization called Quaker House. They are our sister partner that we work with down from North Carolina, and they also contain these documents. We keep these documents on file, and we're ready to recall them for you. In our archive, our lovely archive, we've got these documentations going back to the 1970s. It is phenomenal how people were understanding what they needed to do and what they needed to say to the government, and then was even more profound in the 80s going forward. We can keep those documentations for you. We always recommend to send a digital copy and a physical copy. That way, if anything was ever happen on your end, we have both. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So my son, he signed up when he was in high school. He doesn't have his license yet, but he's over 18, he's 19. So he doesn't have that documentation between 16 and 18.
He can start the documentation now.
Okay.
Yep. And when you start the documentation, you guys keep the access and then send a copy to us. And when we get done, we'll submit it. Yes, ma'am.
When they sign up, is there, you said somebody needs to witness it. Does the witnesser, do they?
They're not going to sign. They will sign off on, so the way it works is after you've done the paperwork for your driver's license, we'll use that one for example, or getting a loan. When they stamp and they put their signature on it to submit the information anyway, they are stating they were a witness that you wrote it. They don't have to put, I witnessed this person writing this. It will automatically state that because what happens is, Uncle Sam gets a hold that you decided, let me take that back. The United States goes into a war, there was a draft. The first thing you're going to say to that draft board is like, oh, wait. Not only have I documented this for years that I'm a conscious objector, I actually wrote this when I did my self-service paperwork. They will ask you, when did you write that? When I got my driver's license. They will go to that documentation when you got your driver's license, they will pull up and say, yep, you wrote that. And then if they need to, they will go to whoever signed off on that paperwork and say, you were there that day, did they write that on the day that there is a date, which means, when you sign your name, and you put, 10, 11, 2025, they will say, yeah, that was written then. So they don't have to write, I witnessed this person did that. Their signature and date will be enough in the United States military and the United States government.
So that's the form they give you when you go to the license branch, or do you bring your own letter?
No. They will, you get your license, you will write that on the form itself.
Okay.
You will write that right there. And if they don't have it, you can request that when you sign off your license, you can say, well, we're going to be saying yes to selective service, but we need to write somewhere that we are opposed to war on any type of legal documentation that is associated with this driver's license. DMVs are supposed to recognize it. And I say are supposed to because politics changes DMVs. Some DMV workers have no clue what's going on. But if you state that to them and they're confused, you can talk to the branch manager. We have had experiences where people have called us right then and there. Hey, I'm talking to this person at the DMV, they have no clue. We tell them immediately, whoever's in charge, get a hold of it. And they can put us on it because we're subject matter experts in it. And we'll explain what needs to be done. We've done that. Actually, this year, I've done it about 10 times this year already. And sometimes everyone gets confused, but at the end of the day, everyone says, as long as it's somewhere on there, they genuinely don't care. Because in their folks, they're just like, well, write the thing and people. And honestly, I'm okay with that. As long as it states what we need to state, and there's a signature and date, we're good.
So even if they signed up in high school, because they did it at the high school, not the DMV.
So if they sign up in the high school and they don't have a driver's license, just do the documentation.
Just do it at the license
Yeah,
branch. Okay.
just start the documentation.
Thank you.
No problem. Yes, ma'am.
I just want clarification on, if you said there was a box that they have to check for the selective service.
Yes, ma'am.
So do they check that box and also say, or do they not
Yes.
check it and say?
No. Check the box and then say. Because if you don't check the box and then say it, they can't get their license. So what the agreement is, as long as they state somewhere after they check the box, because, and the organization's eyes is, we don't want kids not getting a license or funding of any type because they're opposed to war. We can't take the government on, but the agreement is, as long as it's stated somewhere on that form that they are opposed to war, and there's documentation to prove that, that's been the agreement. That's been an honored agreement since the 80s. Now, 2025 has still been an honored agreement because, like I said, we've done the phone calls and it has worked. We stay on top of what the Selective Service is doing and any type of countermeasures. They might say, like, well, we're not going to honor that anymore. Matter of fact, there was a vote, and people that know this, there was actually a vote a couple of weeks ago about Selective Service, and they were trying to be able to draft them as well, and trying to basically take off the box on driver's license for Selective Service because only 25 states recognize that. A lot of states do not have that because you go to places like Washington, D.C., where we're located at, a lot of people don't drive cars, and so how do you get them on Selective Service? So now they're trying to find different ways to do it. That measure failed, but the only reason it failed was because it was being brought in as far as the budget that is now part of the shuffle. So we're not saying that they're not going to keep doing it. What we're saying right now is it only failed because it was part of something that was going to fail to begin with. So that's why we're big on the documentation part, but right now, they have to check the box, but then they need to put that comment next to it. Any other questions? Yes.
So, well, I'm 18 now, and a 20-year-old, but did you say that they should do it now?
They should do it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for how long? Like how many years until that?
We do 5 years if they are past the age of 18. The United States military currently right now, because we're technically not involved in any type of war or major conflicts, and I say technically because we're doing things, kind of the way we want to. The cutoff age is 31 in the United States Army and the U.S. Navy, but in the Air Force it is 26. So we want people to do up to 5 years after they turn 18, and the reason as well too is most kids after they hit 18, if they haven't done it, also start going to college, and a lot of them change their mind. One of the things we deal with in the GRO hotline is called the delayed entry program. Now what happens is when you join the United States military, you don't go right away. What happens is we join, we go to MEPS, and then there's this huge gap between the first time you go to MEPS and the time you go to basic training. That's called delayed entry program. What we find is a lot of kids will sign for the military in high school. Then that senior year summer when they graduate, they will go, I just got accepted for college, or I've changed what I want to do and I want to get out. Now we help them understand how to get out of the program, or how to get out of the entry program. But then we tell them, hey, Uncle Sam will forgive you for now, but just understand that they can come and grab you now because you are now in the system. Which means, even if you got a delayed entry program, they keep you in the system in case for a draft. So then we tell them, you need to start I'm a conscious objector because of A, B, and C. Whether they are or aren't, because they're going to go to school. School breeds education. They understand there's a lot of different ways to deal with war than just to go to war. And a lot of them do become conscious objector. And it's my personal belief, that's why there's always an attack on education. Is education, you open your minds up, and all of a sudden you start thinking differently, and all of a sudden the United States military doesn't seem like the greatest choice in the world on how to deal with all the world's problems. And that's why we do 18, even if they haven't joined the military, they got the driver's license, they were signed it, just go ahead and start documenting. Sir, you're in there. Yes.
So I am 21. I was coming here as a potential graphene. I guess what would, if I'm hearing about it, this objector thing, what are my options?
You signed up for the military yet?
No, I have a driver's license.
Alright, we're off to a good start. So, just like we've been telling everybody, what you're going to do, you're going to go home today, and you're going to write a lovely little paragraph on why you are a conscious objector. And let me talk about what a conscious objector is, just in case the concept sounds familiar, because in all my time in the military and outside the military, until I came to this organization, I didn't know that was still a thing. Conscious objector got really big during the Vietnam War. And it only got big because of one thing and one thing only. Henry Kissinger wanted to put more troops on the ground by negotiating with China, and then he said this: if they don't want to join, they might be a conscious objector, but in real terms, they're draft out. And those two words became such a negative connotation thing that everyone hears that word. What a conscientious objector is this: you feel there are better ways to deal with the world's problems than putting boots on the ground. That's it. So, as a conscientious objector, when you're inside the military, you go through this whole process, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and I'll talk about only in just a little bit. But as a civilian, all you're doing right now is when you write that paragraph, it's just talking about why you're a conscientious objector, why you don't believe the draft works, why the United States military shouldn't be involved in the things that we're always involved with, and why the United States shouldn't be solving the problems in the world in the way we solve the problems in the world. That's it. It is your story on why you don't believe war is the best possible avenue for anything. Has to be one paragraph. Get with me before we leave so I can give you my email, because what you're going to do next is you're going to send me that paragraph, and we're going to keep it on file. Okay? Any other questions? All right, we're going to move to the next section. So, talking a little bit more about conscientious objector and why it's playing a bigger role in the United States right now, and why being a civilian conscientious objector is different from being a military conscientious objector. Because remember, those are two different things. So, as we talked a little bit before, CO status became negative because of the Vietnam War. It became, kind of just went away after we got out of Vietnam in the 80s. Selective service kind of brought it back to the surface because people were like, well, I was a CO during Vietnam, do I have to now register with selective service? Or I was a CO after Vietnam. The United States military said, well, there's no wars we're involved in right now, so we don't really care. That became their attitude. We don't really care if you're a CO. We have nothing involved. Desert Storm hit, and still the United States didn't really care. They cared more about those who were in the military, and even then, they just kind of just was like, just don't go to the press and say you're a CO. That's what they want. Don't go tell anybody you're CO, and we'll just keep you out of Desert Storm. When we got into Iraq and Afghanistan, that mentality changed, and it changed for two reasons. Again, the same two reasons it always changed for. One, after Afghanistan, we overthrew the Taliban. We couldn't do much in Afghanistan because Obama had, Osama bin Laden had crossed over into Pakistan. The United States went, you know what? We've always wanted to topple Saddam. And everybody looked around and said, what do our numbers look like? And they said, well, we have enough for an initial invasion, but that's about it. One of the greatest stories I've heard, because again, I was part of service, was when I got to my unit, Comm Camp unit, I talked to everybody there, and I said, what was it like when you guys had Afghanistan and Iraq? They said, this is what happened to us. The whole unit picked up and went to Afghanistan. We were in Afghanistan for a year, then we got a phone call that said, hey, you guys cannot come home, we're about to invade Iraq. When that happened, a lot of people started claiming CO status. So they were like, oh, yeah, I didn't even agree with this to begin with. You think I'm going to agree with something that has nothing to do with anybody going out of Iraq? And the United States went, oh crap, we have to start monitoring the old CO status. So, to do that, we have two types of statuses as a conscientious objector. We have the 1AO and the 1O. The 1AO means I'm a conscientious objector, but I do not want to leave the military. I want to be considered a civil servant. What that means is you'll be taking off any type of combat arms unit, and then you'll do things like help with any type of base work. Depending on the style of war, you can help with cities that are around. Sometimes they keep you behind, and then after we invade an area, they bring you in to help with those who are needing type services, like, you know, we have to help build this country's infrastructure, so you might go help out with things like that, whatever your MOS can help out with. But the bottom line with the 1AO is you are not part of the combat arms, meaning you're not picking up a weapon, you're not on the front lines, you're not doing things that you don't need to do. You are considered at that point a civil servant to the United States. 1O means you are out completely. That's what we deal with most of the time, is those who are saying, I have a complete opposition to what we do in the United States military. I don't think we're ever going to change our mind how we look on war. And I feel that what we're doing here is just going to lead to us, like a lot of people believe, from Afghanistan and Iraq. We're just going to use this as a jump point to go somewhere else. Those are the ones we see the most cases for, and those are the ones that usually we work with to getting out of the military. Right now, the military is still auditing. It's a long process. We always tell everyone that. If you become a conscientious objector, it is a long process, and it is a long, lonely process. We do these things every second Tuesday of the month called CO peer-to-peer meeting. It's for all the COs we're working with to talk to other COs that are going through this process. Because when I say it's lonely, once you submit your application, you have to tell your unit you are a conscientious objector. Try doing that when you are 11 Bravo infantry. Try doing that when you are a major in the United States military, because to do that, you also have to decondition yourself. You can't do that as a major, you have to step down. And then try doing that when you're all by yourself. It is very lonely. When you have these conversations and you talk to these guys, some of their units literally will kick them to the side and say, well, you're useless to us. Go wait over there while the process is going through. And this isn't like a 3 or 4 minute process. Our average process for a conscious objector is anywhere from 12 to 13 months. So that's 12 or 13 months of you being isolated. Technically, they are supposed to honor that. Technically, they are not supposed to have any type of retribution to being a CO. Technically is the key word. We do get reports in if anyone reports like, hey, they're making me doing this, and I've never had to do this before. No one else in the unit has ever done this, but they're making me do it ever since I turned in my application. We do whatever we can to make sure the unit understands, like, you cannot do this, you understand that. We work with lawyers. One of the lawyers is actually on the board, he works with us when we have to do Air Force applications. But the bottom line, it's a very lonely process, and it's a very long process, because here's how this process goes. First, you turn in your application. Then you have to do an interview with the chaplain. And this is my favorite. You have to do an interview with the psychiatric personnel, because, you're only crazy if you don't like war. And then you do what's called an IO investigation, which then they run through your application, everyone you talk to, the witnesses who put in witnesses statements, and they bring everything together and they go, okay, why are you a conscious objector? Now, this IO hearing is ran by one person, which is the IO hearing officer. How many of you believe that this person works with conscious objectors all the time? Dang, you guys were smart, I thought. No, they grab a random guy in the office and they go, we've got a CO hearing, go deal with that. That's how it's done. A lot of the people that we work with in these meetings, this is the first time doing it. They have no clue. So your belief of war, your belief in how the United States should operate and do things is held in the hand of this one person who has no clue what he's doing. Which is why we tell anybody who goes into CO status, work with us, work with Quaker House, because we do know. We understand what they're allowed to do, we understand what they're not supposed to do, we understand the questions they're supposed to ask. But that's the CO process. After it goes to the IO hearing, this is how important this thing is. It goes all the way up to the Joint Chiefs of Staff for your branch, and then it comes all the way back down. And in that process, there's a huge black hole where nobody knows what's going on. And that's even worse. Because it's not like anyone goes and checks in on that person who's a CO and says, oh, are you okay? Everything all right? You good? No, they wait it out. So that is a military CO and what they have to go through. It is a very long process, and it's an awesome process. We celebrate so big when we finally get the CO status in the military, because it's exhausting. And even in the military takes time, because you can't just say, like, I'm out and walk out the door. You still have to out-process your unit. You have to turn in equipment. Some people are stationed overseas. And once you put in your CO status and you're stationed overseas, it has to be handled overseas with that unit. So you don't come back to the United States. They handle the process. So they got to out-process over there. So you go 12 to 13 months of the CO process, and then you go an additional 2 to 3 months getting out of the military. So, but that's with the military conscious objector. It's completely different than being a civilian conscious objector, which is, as we talked about before, writing that letter and stating that you're a conscious objector. For civilian conscious objectors, this does not show up any time except for when you're from driving. So you don't need to let military recruiters know you're a conscious objector. You can. We do tell those who have registered as a conscious objector, this sort of paragraph, hey, you're 18 years old, you're going to start seeing a lot of recruiters at your school. Just say this simple thing, I'm a conscious objector, I'm good. That's it. No more conversations, they have to break it off. It's not this thing where you got to go to their office, have a conversation, send paperwork to the recruiter. No, literally just say, I'm good, I don't need this. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes.
I do, a little bit of, yes. So, my daughter, she was 18, her school, one of her classes, they made all of the kids go to, there's like a military, some people were there from the military. And she signed something, and I said, what did you sign? And she was like, I don't think it was that, and so, I don't know what, they had her sign something, what it is that she signed. So that makes me a little bit nervous. She doesn't think that it was anything about, signing up for the military, but it makes me a little bit concerned.
So, we work with this organization called WOME, and and they work with
Could you repeat today?
NOMI.
No.
Yes, and they work with high schoolers all across this country when it comes to the militarization of high schools. Because when you start letting recruiters in all free willy-nilly, but I have to sign in, have someone escort me around, kind of feels like it's a little militarized. NOMI explains that sometimes what recruiters have done is phenomenal work. They'll have those days, I was not the only one, and they'll say, think of a job that you always want. No, right now, like, United States military offers that job. You know what? Put your phone number on there and email address, and we'll send you information about it. They cannot, inside of a high school, they cannot go up to your daughter and say, hey, come with me, let's go down to the recruiting station, and let's start signing them up. But they can collect information on their email addresses, home addresses, and phone numbers. That's most likely what she signed, because it's the most common thing that they can do without getting in trouble. It's a very effective tool, because when you're signing this stuff, you don't really think about what you're signing. When I was in high school, my senior year, they made all the seniors go down to a convention center and take the ASVAB as a group. All senior class. And then they submitted that information to recruiters, and then they have what's called Recruitment Month, where they let in a couple local colleges, but most of the military recruiters to basically roam around and talk to everybody who's in senior classes. Then they'll go, well, I have your ASVAB score, you did pretty good. Let's talk. Come out here. I had my recruiter show up to my football games, my wrestling matches. I mean, that guy was like second dad. He was just always there, man. And then by the time I signed everything, he literally looked at me and said, okay, I'm done with you, on to the next person. And that's the last time I saw him from basic training. I tried contacting him and be like, hey man, I did it. And it was just crickets all the way around. But that's one of the greatest things that they do is just data collecting. They know that they are not allowed to actively recruit in a way that is them signing someone up inside school, but they can collect that information. So, what I tell everybody is this. If you have a recruiter that's calling you, block them. When we're dealing with anyone in the late entry program, we tell them all the time, just block them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't owe them anything. Especially if after you've made up your mind to join the military, you're like, oh, I don't want to join. They're like, well, what do I do? My recruiter's going to call me. I'm going to tell you one thing. Block them. Recruiters, I will say, have been very aggressive lately because their numbers are low. And I will tell you 2 stories on what's going on right now, what we're seeing on a daily basis, and what everyone's dealing with once they sign things like that inside the military. A couple years ago, before I joined CCW, there was a naval recruit down in Virginia. He had signed up, he was going to go, he called our organization and said, hey, I just got accepted into college, I do not want to go anymore. He told him the same thing, all right, you're in the late entry program, you can tell your recruiter if you want to, if you don't want to go, you don't have to, but you can let them know, and on the day you're supposed to leave, just don't go. He says, okay. What we didn't know was, he had told the recruiter, I don't want to go. The recruiter came up to him and said, all right, that's cool, man. I'll tell you what, you have to sign some paperwork that states that you don't want to go. I'm going to take you to my office, and then, after that, you're released. The recruiter took him to Maryland, put him in a hotel, and had him shipped out. It took us 72 hours to find him. He was also 17 years old. So, the recruiter should have gotten in trouble for kidnapping, taking a minor across state lines, like parental organ. No, they just did a lateral move. He ended up moving out of the state of Virginia, and now he used to recruit, as far as we knew, at one time in Pennsylvania. We kept track of him because of that right there. We were always scared that he was going to do it again. It was so effective, he didn't get in trouble. I mean, the kid got kicked out of the military, but, who cares? Another thing we get a lot is, I told my recruiter that I didn't want to join, and now he's harassing me. So we do this thing where I tell him, your recruiter knows 2 things now. He knows you don't want to go, and he knows the day you're supposed to leave. So he's going to do everything he can to make you leave. On the day you're supposed to leave, you're going to stay in your house, you're going to lock your door, you're going to get on the phone with me. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about nothing. We're going to talk about the sky being blue, we're going to talk about the grass. Absolutely nothing, because a recruiter has 30 minutes to get you from where you are, well, an hour, depending on location. But they have a certain amount of time to get you from where you are to the MEP station to send you out. Once that time runs up, or the next day, they cannot touch you. So we do a lot of phone calls like that. That's where recruiting's at right now. So we tell people, MEP station is military and processing station. So that's what we tell a lot of people now. Block recruiters. Block them. Recruiters are allowed to call your school. Recruiters are allowed to call your place where you work. Recruiters are allowed technically to get on your property. We tell people all the time, if you're on your property, call the police, don't trust us. They're not going to do anything, they're not going to arrest them. But it's in the message of, leave me alone. So the reason that I'm talking about recruiting, it relates a lot to being a civilian conscious objector, because a lot of recruiters, some recruiters, not all, will not respect it. Well, we hear a lot from kids to say, I told him I was a conscious objector, but he keeps telling me no, I'm not. I was like, yeah, he doesn't know who you are, so what? Or we tell people, lock your doors. Let people know that there's a recruiter bothering you. Some recruiters have been gotten in trouble for stalking because they would literally wait outside where they live, they would wait outside where they work, they would wait outside school for that student, they would get a hold of parents. We've had parents call us saying, my son's recruiter just told us that if he doesn't go in the army, he's going to jail. And I would say, okay, on what? We know that information, but when you get a parent who's calling, who's panicking because this person in a military uniform is telling them that their child's going to go to jail for not joining the thing that they said they were going to join, I think at least twice a day I get a phone call from parents. So we tell parents the same thing. One, if the kid lives in your house, then they're still under your control. I mean, that sounds really bad, but as an 18-year-old, I didn't want to hear that. Someone telling my parents to control me in their house. But the point is this: that recruiter cannot come in and just yank your kid out without your permission. That's one. Two, you have the final authority on if that kid's going to grow. A lot of recruiters are smart. They try to get the parents in on it early. So they will talk to the parents more than they talk to the kid about joining the military. Where your kid's going to be able to do this. And like, yeah, I benefit from college. College is phenomenal. Now let me tell you how I got those benefits. I was blown up 5 different times. I was shot at 6 different times. I was almost drowned about twice. And I got involved in conflicts that the United States government decided to go, well, technically we weren't all that involved. PTSD is not fun. PTSD drives me nuts. I have what my wife and I call a special month, where I start remembering everything I ever did in the military while I was deployed in Iraq. So I tell people when they're like, did you like the military? No, I could have earned it a different way. I could have just went to college, had the grades for it. I could have just gone. Or I could experience life as an adult. 10 times better than watching good friends die. Apologize for being a little graphic. But I tell that stuff because a recruiter won't say all that. And a lot of recruiters have deployed. Or they'll make it seem like the deployment was fun. This was the greatest thing I ever did. This was so much fun. I had fun over there. Like, yeah, that's fun in a weird, morbid way, but sure, whatever. The reason that links up with conscious objectors, the reason that links up with selective service is because recruiters will make it seem like selective service doesn't play a part in anything. And technically it doesn't unless there's a draft. And recruiters will say this line too. If you're conscious objector, just tell them when you get in the military. They'll move you out. They'll move you to a non-combat job. Which, the fallacy of that is, technically that is true. If you become a 1AO status, you technically aren't in a combat arms unit, you've been moved out. It takes so long to get there. It's not a day one deal. It's not you go to basic training to like first one. Hey, by the way, I'm a conscious objector and I don't want to kill people. And they go, oh, well, okay, come right over here, come over the group we have over here for 1AOs, and you'll be good to go. That's not how any of that works. They do that a lot. We get those phone calls where, well, my recruiter said that I don't have to kill people. And I say, well, I was a combat photographer. I kill anybody. But you still go to zones where that happens. And they say all this stuff to counter anything about selective service and counter conscious objectives. And we've seen this a lot because of what's going on in the world. I was telling Mike earlier, we have seen an influx of conscious objectives for the Navy and the Air Force at the time the United States got involved in Israel and Hamas. Couldn't figure out why. For 3 straight months, we were seeing all these applications coming from these 2 branches. Finally, he asked, why? And they said, well, we are directly involved in this. We are sending our planes over there, so we have to coordinate everything, all the bombing rounds, we have to coordinate who's going up, who is doing what, and we are also the ones that are moving the carriers, the battleships, and destroyers into locations. We are the ones before the Marines and the Army gets involved to do this stuff. And then we have to turn on the news, because when I was in, that's all you watch. You just watch the news on the loop. Watch the news on the loop for something you inadvertently did, and all of a sudden you start thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. You feel your hands on it. And so, when we get these applications and we start seeing, we've learned to do, before I got here, and even more so when I got here, because I believe data is key to understanding what's going on, we start seeing, anytime the United States gets involved in something weird, we'll see an influx for the Marines. We got an influx of Marines. Recently, we're done with an influx of Marines. Why? Because we are hitting Venezuela right now. And when you talk to those Marines, they will tell you this: the Marines are the first ones in. They're always the first ones in. We are really terrified we're going to be the first ones in. That's what we're getting told. So we're seeing an influx of CO applications from them. We talked to everybody early, and we started doing these workshops a lot in the last couple months because we also believe that the United States is gearing up for something. I was talking to several people this morning. I come from a marketing background, whether I like it or not. One thing I tell people to watch for, my son finally caught up and helped showed me is commercials will tell you exactly what the United States is gearing up for, is trying to do. We see that mostly during Christmas time, so from July all the way up until January, we see Christmas ads running back to back. Forget those other holidays that don't matter, Christmas is king, right? But if you start paying attention to FX, FFX, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, if you pay attention to commercials, it is military commercials. And they are running on a fast speed. I'm not saying that we're building up for something. What I'm saying is the United States military has a great way of saying we need personnel without saying out loud we need personnel. Some people, I was in a meeting before, they called it the 9/11 marketing, and then I also heard the military corporation marketing, and it's phenomenal because they take those two things and they put it in a way that makes it seem very good. You're doing your service, great things if you're doing the military. You're going to be one of those people that everybody wants to look at and be a part of. This could be you if you were here. And it could be. It's not somewhere you want to go. So I know I covered a lot. I know I talked really fast because I do when I get really excited, especially when I talk about this. So just to recap a couple of things. One, for your kid to claim CO status when they join the military, when they do their driver's license, they need to write I'm opposed to war in any form. After that, they need to start keeping documentation. You can do that documentation early. You can do the documentation after you turn 18 and if you've got a driver's license. The biggest thing is documentation, documentation, documentation. Stating, I'm opposed to war, and then list the reasons why. We talked a little bit about the different types of conscious objectors. You have the military side of it, which is a 1O, 1AO, which just means 1AO means you are still in the military, but you're opposed to war. You like to be moved outside of any type of combat arms. 1O is when you get completely removed. CO status in the civilian sector just literally means I'm opposed to war. This is meant for the draft board if the draft is to happen. We also talked about what our organization does. We work with those who are COs, we work with those who are on the GRS hotline, and so on and so forth. We're pretty involved, and we have to be even more so these days because it is getting way more complicated and way more intricate on how the military plays a part in everybody's everyday life and how they can get people. Trump is doing this whole build-up on trying to get people, and we've seen this a lot, green card status people into the United States military. We have seen that as safety. Sure. The greatest thing they can do, though, if you join the military and don't go to MEPS, they can take that status away from you. Just like that. And if they do take the status away from you, guess what they have? They have your phone number, they have your home address. So you see people just going in. Not understanding what they're going to be used for, but just going in because they're worried all that stuff's going to get taken away from them. Oh, and then they're going to get taken away at the same time. So it is becoming very integrated on how COs are playing a part in the military. Right now, CO status is still being honored, and that is key for us right now. Selective service is still at its basic form, which is you will have to sign something that says you are part of selective service, but there is still a way to sit down and conscious objector. Right now, that is being honored, and that is good. We stay abreast on what's going on with selective service. Like I said, we were on top of when they were trying to put in that women now can be part of the draft if there's a draft, and they will get targeted by selective service, and that there will not be a box on driver's license. We were on top of it. Before they can do anything with selective service, even though they create legislation for it, they have to hold a town hall hearing. They have to. It is law. They have to hold a town hall hearing. We stay on top of that. Mike Boyd, since we have information, we're seeing that information at the town hall hearing does happen. Because, yeah, it's pretty cool that myself and like 5 other organizations say, no, this is wrong. It's even better than the American people say. Because the way I see it, I've had these lovely phone calls where someone says to me, I voted for Trump, but I did not go to the military to do this. And I say, oh yeah. Yeah, they can definitely. And they say, is this legal? And I say, well, yeah. If you know about it, then it's legal. They're not trying to be tricky. I mean, selective service to me is a very deceitful way to get people to join the military. But yeah. And then I hear a lot of people saying, this is not what my government should be. And I say, it's ironic because we hear that so often. This is the only thing you have to do is just stand for it. That's it. So like I said, we will send you that information when there's a town hall meeting. Anything else that you guys have questions for? If we leave out today, we still have, yes, sir.
A person who has 1O status, my recollection from way back when was that it was not a get out of jail free card. There were a couple of years of alternative service involved in that. Is that still?
That is still the case. So basically with the 1AO status and alternative services, two things can happen. You can say, I'm on 1AO status, but I want to stay with my unit. A lot of people don't come at arms when they put the status up. You can say they just give you alternative duties. Basically, they just take away your weapon. You can get moved into a hospital and spend your time doing that. You can work whatever is needed from the base. You go to almost what's called leads in the military, and they basically just say, well, we have a mechanic shop on the base and needs one person to help them out. That's where you're stationed at now. They just move you out of that unit because that's in general what you're asking for. I don't want to be deployed in combat arms. I don't want to carry a weapon. That's a lazy way of explaining 1AO status, but it is that. It is moving you outside that combat arms unit, moving you away from weapons into an area of the military that they see fit still keeps you armored and no combat arms, no weapon.
But what about 1O status?
That pulls you completely out. So those are the ones we work on an everyday basis. So you go through the process.
There is an alternative service then?
No, you are completely pulled out of the military. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So a couple things, I want to ask, like, what laws or what bodies, oversee conscientious objection? So like, is it a congressional move that has to happen? Like, is there a chance that, well, that our administration would have some sort of executive power to change that, or?
So there is one congressional law and one Supreme Court ruling, and I'll explain. The first one was I forget the name of it, and I will send you it, but it's basically the treatment of conscious objectors during World War I. When the Presbyterians, Mennonites, and the Quakers all came together and said, like, hey, you guys treat them like dirt, lower than dirt, you just treat them like trash. There has to be some sort of law put in place to protect these people once they hit CO status. When that law came into being, it was only for religious organizations. So you had to be part of a church, you had to claim that there is a God, you had to claim that you were religious in some way, shape, or form. In 1973, there was a new Supreme Court ruling that stated you could be on CO status without declaring that you are on status because of a supreme being, which basically means you could be over ethical, moral, whatever it is, you can be on the status. That was a Supreme Court ruling. Now, you are asking the great question that some of us are staying up late at night with. I will say this, take the information as you will. President Trump is really weird about war. I don't know if you guys have noticed that we have been monitoring it because we're really trying to gauge him on CO status. Last week, when they did the whole Pete Hegseth thing, we were really worried that he was going to talk about conscious objective. They didn't. Here's what I have personally gathered about him. He, of course, was a draft dodger. I'm going to call it what it is. Since he wants to call everybody else what they want to call him, I will call it that, a draft dodger. And he is really worried about the United States not getting fully committed to wars, just kind of like what we're doing now in Venezuela, just kind of doing this weird stuff. No one has come out from that administration, the first time or this time, and said they will not honor conscious objective. Like I said, that meeting with Pete Hegseth, when we got the administration's, the whole outline of that meeting, still nothing. And it's so weird. Can it? Technically, yes. But it would take almost all of Congress to get rid of it. And mainly because CO status is underneath DOD, Department of Defense. So it would take a lot. Now, do I think that they won't do it? I think they will if someone figured out how to do it and make it not seem like that thing. I mean, we figured out a way how to get around the draft, selective service. So, if they can figure something out like selective service for conscious objector, I believe they will. I don't think they'll be completely get rid of it. I just think they'll figure out a new way to keep people from getting CO status. And that's something we're really worried about. Because right now, it's for everybody who believes that war is wrong. Our fear is they will say, well, everyone's so broad, and it's hard to tell if they mean this before they join the military. So now we're going to require this on top of everything. That's our biggest concern. Because there might not be a tool for us to use. I would say there's two things that are troubling us, our organizations right now. There are two things. One is the CO thing. We have been watching, as Pete has said, wants to be old school patent, like I'm the commander-in-chief, even though the president is, and we're gonna do all this great stuff. I have a lot of friends who are still in the military, and they would strike my time. I'm like, this guy was an out-of-shape captain in the National Guard. What's happening here? But we are very concerned about it. And there's another thing we're really concerned about too, we're watching. A lot of people don't know this, but there is another type of delayed entry program, where let's say you decide to join the military, like you cannot pass the ASVAB and you cannot pass physical tests. They take you, and they put you in these training camps where you cannot leave. It's hard for anyone to contact anyone out, like basically make a phone call. And they will do everything they can to get you ready, and then they will send you basic training. It is a black box to us. We cannot talk to the individual inside. We usually talk to family members. We cannot figure out how to pull them out of it because it's kind of like, it's almost like they sign into the military without actually being in the military. It's this weird program. And because it's still on beta status, nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about it until we get a phone call. And they're like, my child's been gone for 3 months to this training program, he's not supposed to be gone for a month at most. What can we do to get him out? Nothing. We have to wait until he gets the basic training before we can do anything. This program has been in beta status now for 5 years. Because when it's in beta status, you don't have to talk about it. It is completely off the grid. The only reason we know about it is because we constantly get the phone calls. So we create notes about like, okay, most of these things are happening at Fort Jackson or for a base over in San Diego for the Marine Corps. We do know that much information. I can't tell you who to contact when your child says I'm in this location. I can't even tell you where to go on that base to talk to. So between what they're doing right now, which is nothing right now, with CO status, and this, these are two things that we keep our eyes on, and we just basically build a database on how to deal with it. He hasn't said anything right now about getting rid of it, but our fear is if we genuinely get involved with anything, if Venezuela turns into a domino effect and we really do get involved in something, we think that's when they'll try and do something with CO status. We think they'll try to use like service, all their power, and actually do something with conscious objection status. That is our fear right now.
So I told you I had a couple questions. Thank you for answering that one. And when you write that annual letter and you file it with your minister or pastor and with your office as well, are there do's and don'ts of the contents? Like, I mean, do they like judge the letter and say, oh, well, your reasoning isn't valid, or, you know?
No. And what we do a lot of times too is that letter is literally just to say I don't want to join because I don't believe in war. You don't have to make it, graduate thesis on why you don't believe in war. It just has to be you saying it, and then it's documented somewhere. So after that is done, what we do is we write your annual letter, because we give people say like, hey, I'm not sure my annual letter, is there anything I need to add to it? Nope. The only thing you need to do is update the date, and maybe put the new age at the bottom.
Same letter every year?
Yep, just update the year. And that's about it.
And they don't like when you say you are drafted and you present your documentation and proof that you're a conscientious objector, they don't before a board for them to decide, is your church, does their doctrine support this, or?
Because what's going to happen is if we do come before draft board, they're just going to ask, well, where was that letter stored? With this church. Then they're going to go to the church and say, like, hey, this person says they're a conscious objector before X date. We just want to make sure they sent you a letter. Do you have the letter on file? Yes, we do.
Because what I read online, I've been doing a little research on this since I signed this workshop, was like, you could have done it when you first signed the selective service stuff at the high school, but they don't tell you that. But it's still okay to do it later when you go to the license branch for your license. And you just keep filing these things with your office in the church. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Nothing crazy, nothing big. We're not looking for pieces. The only time we get the nit and gritty of what you've written is when we actually do CO applications for those in the military.
Okay.
Those we make them do. We will make some people write their draft multiple times because this is what I tell everybody. That application is the only time someone genuinely listens to you about why you're conscious objector. After that, it's just questions. You don't get to explain. They'll just say something like, were you a conscious objector before this day right here? Is your MLS the reason you're a conscious objector, so on and so forth. That letter, when you become a CO status in the United States military, you write that. That's the only time you get to genuinely say, this is why I'm a conscious objector. That's the only time we really critique what you're writing. Because it's not our voice, it's your voice. But for your son's purposes or for anything like that, just keeping everything up to date. No, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, it doesn't have to be anything big, and the only thing you have to do to update it is just put a new date. And then that way, when they ask what this file is, this letter is, they will go to the source and then pull it from us.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you told me that you would disqualify, or I heard you told me, you know, if you had passed the ASVAB or a physical test. There used to be other exceptions too, like if you're gay or lesbian or
So,
have a history of mental health issues or something.
yeah, that's a
like that.
fun one. So weirdly about the mental health issues, they will bypass it as long as the recruiter will, and this is what happens a lot when we call this fraud, will tell the recruit, say, like, don't talk about that. If anyone at Knives asks you if you have mental health stuff, just say no. So that's how it's bypassed. But if you do have mental health, I think bipolar right now is like the one that they're okay with. They'll be like, well, just tell me your medication. Or they'll say, are you on medication for anything like this? A lot of things that used to be considered disqualifiers aren't as much because there's so many ways they can say, well, I'm doing this. Because think of it this way. We're looking at ways that kids should not be going to the military. There are some people who really want to join. And because there are individuals who really want to join, there are ways, the military created ways to get around. Like, oh, just, well, if it's mental health, just go to a therapist that we know that works out of half town, tell them that you're better, and you get a permission slip that says you're good. And we'll vouch for you. So, gay, lesbian, all that, no. Trans right now is what we're watching really big right now, because we're watching how they're treating in the military, which we think will end up being a disqualifier. We know that they're not allowing that to be elective surgery in the military, so we are paying attention to that one, but so far, that still hasn't been a way for them to keep people out, so we don't think they're going to use that as a way to keep people from joining the military. As of this moment today, because Monday starts a whole new day with the administration, and God knows what's going to happen next week.
Sure.
But as of right now, no, we're not seeing any of those things being disqualifiers because the idea of, at the time, especially when I came in 2007, at the time it wasn't looked at as a bad thing because we needed the numbers. And so when we need the numbers for a lot of things in the military, they kind of say, well, okay, but just know if you're openly gay or whatever, we're going to treat you like crap. And that's kind of the weird handshake they do in the military. They don't want to be disqualified because they need numbers, they just treat you like garbage.
Would you state that in your letter, that I'm
Yes.
a peacenik and also I'm the gay?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
At the end of the day, as long as you write that you're a conscious objector to war, or any wars, and that's another thing, and it's like the biggest thing. Caught myself when I did it. When we write the letters, you cannot say, I'm a conscious objector to the war in Israel, the war in Ukraine. It has to say all wars. That is the biggest qualifier. Thank you very much for jogging my memory like that. Yes, it has to be all wars. And if it's not all wars, your application, your written statement becomes null and void. Because they will say, and I bring this up because that's kind of how they do in these interviews. They will say, you're against all wars. How do you feel about the Civil War? That did a lot of good, right? How do you feel about World War II? That did a lot of good, right? The Revolutionary War, that did a lot of good, right? They also forget there was conscious objection to the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, all through time and history of the United States and the world, there's always been a conscious objector. But they will try really hard by using usually those two words they get. Well, the United States freed slaves. Are you against that? Like, no, there's a better way to do it. All wars has to say all wars. Cannot say a specific war. You cannot say some wars. You cannot say even, I think World War II was great. All the other ones suck. You cannot say that.
Okay.
That's big information. Big.
Any other questions?
Is this your website, the first one on this?
Oh, he didn't see the sheet.
Yes.
Okay.
On that little half sheet there.
And then I'll get my email address out too, so everybody can have it. Yes, sir.
Is it okay to reproduce this?
Yes, it is. And if you need more different material or in-depth material,
Okay.
send me an email and say, we're going to have a conversation about this, but we want to know about A, B, and C, and I will flood you with material. I have the only good thing the military is taught me is how to get information out. I work with what's called PSYOPs operations, and if you tell one person, you've eventually told 10 people. One person will tell another person, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So it does work, trust me. I would be doing this workshop had that not happened. And, oh, yeah, we can do it right now. Let me know when everybody's ready to copy. Ready? It is Richard, my first name, at center on conscious.org. And then if you missed it, I will definitely give it out again.
Center unconscious, like one word.
Yep.
John, do you have anything to say?
I mean, I'm not from the United States. I'm from Germany, and I'm actually volunteering here. And I see like a big change in Europe and in Germany. We don't have the selective service system yet. They are trying to get to the point where the United States is right now, and I'm really opposed to it. And I'm really grateful to do the workshops with Richard now and learn a lot about the system in the United States and what we can learn from it in Germany or actually any country, Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the things that having Jonathan told us that, because we don't really know what's going on in other countries as far as the military, when he talked about them looking at a draft, one of the people we work with, I talked to Bill about it, and I said, is everybody looking at a draft? And he said, yes. And he said, right now, because the world does not know what the world itself is going to do, it sounds a lot smarter to have military ready at all times than it is to try to build an army. And like he said, we believe at some point there will become a selective service. Either everybody copies the United States or we copy everybody else. And we never take the good sometimes, we usually take the things that are bad. And our opinion is Trump likes strong men. And when he sees them doing the things they do, he is okay with it. He wants to do it himself. And if you get strong men who do things, but they are quote unquote on our side, then he's more likely to follow. And one of the things, and I think not just because we decided to do them, I think a lot of church organizations and a lot of organizations and parents have noticed that there could be a draft. You guys recognize it way faster than we did. It's not that we weren't paying attention. It's just we don't have kids in school. I have a 16-year-old in school, and he already knows he's joining the military. And I can tell you because I tell him anything about being in the military, and he's like, that's dumb, why'd you do that? I'm like, oh, kid, I was 16, 18 years old. So, and I'm the youngest. Out of all these organizations I've worked with, I'm the youngest at 36. And I'm the only one with young kids. And so, it is hard for us to cope with what's still going on in high schools. Now, the reason we know what's going on in high schools is because parents talk to them. We know he talks to us when we have our annual meetings. But like Jonathan was saying, the idea that other countries are gearing up for the idea of what a draft would look like again, that's what worries us about the selective service, because it isn't final on how that selective service looks in the States. It is only final if it benefits the United States. If we don't need to have more personnel on the ground anymore, selective service works for us, because it can guarantee that we can have a draft, but it doesn't mean that we need a draft because we know where everybody's going to be at. The ability to take out certain provisions in, which is the one we were watching, where they're going to take away, if you have a driver's license, you're not going to get signed up. Our fear is always going to be the second you hit 18, because remember, the government has everybody's birth certificates, and social security numbers, the second you hit 18, you were automatically registered for selective service. That would guarantee you at least 1 million+ people. That is something that is one of our biggest concerns, is that right there. That they just take away everything, scratch out everything, and just say, we're never going to use it, and people go, oh, if you're never going to use it, we're okay with it. And then not understanding there is some danger in that. And that is always, the idea that you can be okay with something because it hasn't happened yet is always my biggest fear. And ironically, I learned that in the military. In the military, taught me that. And so, that is right now our biggest concern with selective service. It got defeated, but everyone's like, yeah, it got defeated, but our purview, because I come from politics, was it got defeated because it was part of something else. It wasn't a standalone thing. And so we worry that when someone gets smart and goes, let's make it a standalone issue, then it works. Because there's only one way to preach that. They just say, we're taking these measures just in case the United States has to do with anyone evil. And then everyone loses their imagination on who that evil person is, and they go, you're right, let's stay away from whatever I just imagined. And then we have a selective service that just says, when a person turns 18 years old, you're automatically registered for selective service without your knowledge. We already have all the information we need to register you on. The only thing you probably have to do every 5 years is update your driver's license so we know where you live.
Is there a database or something where we can check where our kids' status is at?
No. We have been trying to get the United States to create a database since the 90s, after the Gulf War. As far as I'm concerned, there is not a true database. And I asked that before I left just to make sure, because other people have also asked that question. So far, there is nothing we can see. You can't even request FOIA to take on the information because technically it doesn't house anywhere. What they'll say is, well, when you signed your driver's license, that was your record. We have heard that. But no, there's nothing we can look at.
Sorry, one more question. For clarification, so when a child turns 18, so when they're, when they get their license, they're automatically registered or whatever. Do they have to do it again when they're 18?
No.
Like, okay. Because I know my son, he got something that said, when he turned 18, he got something that said that he had, the whole thing, you'll go to jail if you don't.
Yeah.
So
No.
he didn't.
If they didn't get you with your driver's license, they'll try to get you when you're 18, but it usually runs through the school system. School system. Now, if you are a graduate and haven't seen anything, you'll just get something in the mail. Basically, the government will say, like, we still don't have you registered, and we know that you are at least 18. That doesn't always hold true in a lot of states. So I will say every state does it that way, because a lot of states get everyone at 16, and the government is kind of, well, you can grab them at 16, and anyone else will see you grab them later. If you have any type of disability, a known disability, they do not go after them either, so you turn 18, don't have to worry about registering for selective service. They are really picky currently on who they want to register for selective service. Of course, right now it's just males, and the age groups at least between 16 and 18, and if they're registered, they will go 18 up to 26, I think, currently. Don't quote me on that, but I will get back to you if that is not correct. But after a while, they will stop, and then they only stop because the ages that the military wants in the United States military. So, that's why they said that. Now, they work way harder in high schools and colleges to make sure everybody's ready for selective service. So like I talked about earlier, when it comes to driver's license, any type of scholarship or grants, anything like that, that's where they try to get you the best. They also can do it, and we've only heard of this happening one time. There was a loan person who was giving out loans to colleges, and they would ask, are you registered for selective service? And then they don't register for selective service, and they give them a loan. We only know that one instance, so I won't say that happens a lot. But we only know that one instance because a parent told us. That doesn't mean that no one else is doing it. It just means that was the only time we were informed. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment that my son has been homeschooled his entire life. And so he's not going and hasn't been exposed, and we will not allow him, because of the homeschooling, to be exposed to that type of solicitation from recruiters and things. And so I'm really grateful. I just wanted to state that I'm really grateful for this opportunity, because I've been videotaping this, and I'm going to share it out to all of my friends as much as I can, whose kids are also homeschooled and have had alternate type of education, because this is the only place they're going to find this information. Really. So I'm really grateful, Richard. Thank you.
We were talking earlier, selective service is sneaky. You don't know who you're registered for it. And like I said, when I joined the military at 16 years old, when I joined the military before that, when I was 16 years old, I got my driver's license. My parents didn't sign off on my license. I did it by myself inside there. So I just started signing off on stuff. And the only thing they asked me is your dad around? And I said, yeah, he's outside. And that was it. Mm-hmm. I registered for selective service and didn't even know.
Yep.
And so the reason these workshops have been good, and the reason that we're happy that parents are asking us, church organizations are asking us to do this, is just simply that. The worry that their kid could accidentally check a box, or the worry that, they don't know what the recruiter is saying, because if you ever listen to the recruiter, every word is impactful. This is about you. You are going to be an adult. This is your life. This is college, and so on and so forth. It just sounds like when I joined the military, man, I was like, yeah, I come from a long line of military, so I thought, like, this is what we do. And the recruiter knew that. He used that information to get to me. Well done. He said, you're going to be like your grandfather, your dad, everybody who joined the military before you. That's what you want. So I did. So, yes, I'm actually glad we've been doing these workshops too, because my kids now have their friends asking about selective service. And when the kids come over, they're like, So they can just do that. I'm like, yes, they can just do that. It takes some really weird what the government can do without me knowing, but yes, they can do that. And so, if my kids are doing it and going through this, the thought process is always like, who else needs this? So we're always thankful that parents and church organizations are coming to us and asking it. But you guys have also done way more active. We've gotten so many emails like, hey, just to let you know that they are having this type of recruiting event going on. We didn't know if you guys want to send somebody, which we try to do. We send somebody to know me, like, hey, high school's having this weird recruiting event. It seems weird. Do you guys want to send personnel down there just to be like, hey, you don't have to do that, by the way. Like, there are ways to get into college. There are other programs that can help you get out, help you get on the lifelong journey of adulthood, and as fun as it is. So we do appreciate that. These are things that we don't get to hear about because in our world, we get locked in on the GRS hotline and conscious objectors that we miss sometimes, like what's going on in the schools, what's going on with the kids. So we appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, you said you came from Washington DC for this.
Yes, ma'am.
For this, are you appearing other places too while you're here?
No, this is it.
How quick do you come and go?
We will be leaving here in a couple hours, and then we have another workshop on the 26th, and then we have 3 more in November, and those are 3 traveling ones. We have a lot of ones we do on Zoom. We are very busy. So our lifestyle, that is the first part of the year is just us planning. We spend a lot of time on conscious objective applications, picking up what we left off on that. This summer, we do a lot of major events. We had a great event I'm so happy about this July. Everybody knows who Captain America is, right? Alright, so I did not know this, and I listened to this on a podcast, and I literally stopped from going on a 4th of July vacation to try to get around this guy. Captain America was actually, one of the voices of Captain America was written by a conscious objector. You hear this voice, and it's Civil War movie, the Captain America Civil War movie, when there's a great debate going on between should you always do what the government tells you to do, or should you not? The guy who wrote it in the 70s, after everyone started losing faith in the United States government, right around the time Nixon left office, we were getting involved more in Vietnam. They came to him because he knew he was a conscious objector and said, can you give us a Captain America who doesn't talk like a Captain America of World War II? And he wrote it. And I heard that on the podcast, and I literally, going up into the mountains in New York, and I turned my car around, and all the way home, just emailed everybody and said, does anybody know how to get a hold of this guy? We had him at the event, it's actually on our website, he spoke, and it was phenomenal. He said, when I got a hold of him, he said, of course I'll do it. He's like, no one ever asked me about being a conscious objector. Everybody always asked me about what it was like to write for Captain America. And he said, when they did the movie, and they came to him, they're like, hey, we love your voice, we need your voice to speak again. He was so timid, because he was like, this is Captain America. He's being used on battleships. He's the guy that says, let's go. I have to give a voice to this guy that says, but what if we just did it? And he was so profoundly affected by a lot of people because the way he saw it, and when he started going to conventions again, he said, people will come up to me like, man, you really got me questioning about should we always listen to the government? But they still never asked about his CO status. So when he said, it is weird that he found out, look, I was listening to podcasts. I had my kids yelling at me at the time because we were turning around because I was like, I had to get a hold of it. So I told the kids, I'm like that. So, the way I look at conscious objection status, the way I look at how just parents talking to us is this. Kids are hearing these voices about what it means to not directly listen to government. It's hard, but they are hearing it. And having someone like him to talk and to say, you know what, you guys don't for this, but guess what, this is why he sounded like this. It was phenomenal because then we had a couple of young people and people were going through conscious status on watching that interview. And they said, it's funny, every time I watch that movie, I am so entrenched in that idea. I'm like, yeah, we have to be. Because if we don't, we run into an Iraq again. I tell my kids all the time, I was like, hey, my dad was in Iraq, and I was in Iraq, and our joke was always like, I just picked up what he left off. Technically, that's true. And I was like, what my fear is? You go to Iraq and you pick up where I left off? That's one of my biggest fears. And I was like, do you know how we got Iraq? And they all say, well, he was doing bad things. I was like, no. Yeah, he was doing bad things to the people that were there. We didn't find that until we got over there, and I do appreciate the service I was able to do when I was over there. But it was always disguised as he was doing bad things to us. And I will never forget my son said to me, he said, wait, but we didn't know this? No. We were told for weapons and mass destruction. And he's like, so then how do we know that they're always saying that? I was like, we don't. We just don't. And that's when my 16-year-old went, I don't want to join the military because I don't know what I'm going to be asked to do. And I said, that is the smartest thing you could who's ever said it. I was like, if your mother had her way before she went through when I was 18, she told me the same thing. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.